Of course, good morning to everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Pedro Faria, and today I'm going to be talking about Alteryx and FP&A. Today is our second webinar. Last week we had the first webinar talking about Alteryx and FP&A. Today's agenda, I'm going to do a brief introduction. We're going to be doing just a quick recap of what we talked about during our last session, and then we're going to jump into more use cases. Today, we're going to be talking about predictive modeling, so forecasting in the future, as well as manipulation of PDFs. And then at the end, we're going to do some Q&A. So let's begin. A little introduction of myself, of course. As I mentioned, my name is Pedro Faria. I am a professional service consultant over here at Data Meaning, as well as trainer. If you want to reach me via email, this is my email. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, here you go. That's my LinkedIn page. Pedro Dr. Faria. Okay, I'm part of the Data Meaning enablement team. What I do is I specialize in best practice, enablement, process automation, solutions implementation, and of course, training. When it comes to Alteryx, I am certified for Alteryx Designer Core, Alteryx Designer Advanced, Alteryx Partner, Alteryx Server, as well as Alteryx Sales. Okay. Before joining Data Meaning, I was responsible for teaching and implementing solutions at a Big Four. To be more specific, PwC. So I do come from a finance, accounting, and retail background. Actually, back in college, my major was accounting and finance as well. So that's why I do come from this background. And then later on in my career, I just switched careers, going into this more of a technological path instead of just being regular accounting and finance, for example. Okay. So that's why today we're going to be talking about FP&A again. All right. So let's dive deeper into FP&A in Alteryx. As I mentioned, today is going to be our second session. We did have a session last time. So it is posted on our YouTube page, as Emily just dropped in the chat as well. So if you want to go ahead and watch that, it's going to be on our YouTube page. Okay. So let's begin. FP&A in Alteryx. Just a quick recap. What did we talk about during our last session? We talked about data quality and why that is important for FP&A. There's this quote that it came out a couple of years ago about companies and the data quality, as well as timely access to the data. So only 12% of companies, as of the date, they had access to the right data in the right manner when it comes to time, right? So what we're saying is that you're going to have spending a lot of money getting access to data. You're going to have spent a lot of time developing process and everything else. But when you look in general, in a high level, is the data that you're manipulating right there the correct data? So this is what Alteryx can introduce you and help you with, as well as, of course, process automation and a lot of things that we did talk about during our last session. But why do we always focus on data? The reason why we focus on data is if at some point you are manipulating bad data, maybe we talk about stale data or wrong data, for example. So something, if you're creating some kind of analysis that requires you to have the latest available data, so like data from an hour ago, or maybe from yesterday, or like last month, if your data is not connecting live, your software is not connecting live to your live data, you may get old data, so stale data at the end of the day. So that could be a reason for an issue to arise, as well as maybe because you're not really too familiar with everything that englobes data itself, you may be looking at the wrong data, right? So you do not have the ability of getting deeper into data analytics and understand that if that's the correct data that you have or not. So at the end of the day, if your FP&A department is not manipulating the correct data, what can happen? Uninformed decision making, right? We're talking about bad reasoning and wrong understanding of the situation that you are analyzing as of that date. That means that bad data quality leads to just the wrong decision making being taken, right? So if you're looking at the wrong data, or at least old data, the decision making that you are taking as of right there is not going to be the correct one, right? So for this, it leads to just bad end results at the end of the day. You're going to be wasting what? Your time, which is money. You're going to be wasting the data that you purchase, which of course, it can be expensive. And at the end of the day, if you're wasting that, if you're not generating more revenue with the data that you purchase, instead of being investment, that becomes just an expense, right? Then you can lose money because you're not generating revenue off that. And then what's the end result is that the bottom line of your company will tank if at the end of the day, you're not leveraging data the correct way. And Alteryx is the correct way to leverage data when it comes to just manipulation of data in general, as well as I mentioned before, process automation. We talked about as well 5 different key things. So personas, ease of use, automation, elimination of human errors, and then the ability of going beyond what you can do. Personas, we talked about during the last session, manual processes, right? So maybe creating some kind of process automation that takes in a specific process that you're doing manually right now on a repetitive basis. And then you have the ability of taking that and automating the process. However, that process does not require you to have an advanced level skill. So you can just know, for example, how to manipulate data in Excel, for example, just a regular process. So now we're talking about a irregular analyst persona. However, today, as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about as well as something more advanced, right? So going beyond of what we mentioned before, having the ability of leveraging things that you before you had no idea how to do. Today, we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned before, predictive modeling, as well as manipulation of PDF files. So with this, you're going to have the ability of accomplishing the persona of a regular analyst, maybe a data scientist, and then in the future, you're going to be able to see how you can actually leverage for Alteryx for those high-level people. So I'm talking about the C-suite level people. So your CEO, your CFO, giving them the ability of just running the workflows and getting the latest reports available. So everything comes down to ease of use, the fact that Alteryx is super user-friendly, the ability of process automation, so just automating the whole process, and of course, a lot more when it comes to eliminating human errors, right? So you just automate the process and you eliminate any type of error, okay? And then, as I mentioned before, you have the ability of going beyond what you think you can do as of today. So this is just a quick recap of what we talked about during our last class, actually not class, our last session. Alteryx and FP&A, they go together, right? Mostly because we're talking about process automation, which is probably one of the main things that you guys want to do, right? Just getting any type of process that you have that you do repetitive, and then you're automating that process. Our last session, we talked about manual process. So building out a simple forecast, process automation of regular processes that you have, something more manual. Today, we're going to be diving deeper into something, I'll say more complex, but at the same time, more interesting as well. Okay? So, as I mentioned during the last class, our last session. The last session, we talked about more Alteryx in general. I did present to you 4 different use cases, but today we're going to dive deeper into the platform because those processes, you can kind of understand how they work. You're just simply getting a regular process that you have, you recreating everything inside of Alteryx, and then you have that process automated. Today, we're going to be diving deeper into the platform and introducing to you more advanced things, okay? If you have any questions regarding how Alteryx works in general, we have given different webinars before, and of course, I'm going to be giving webinars in the future as well, talking about introducing Alteryx and everything else. So as I mentioned, if you go to the chat on Zoom, you should be able to see our LinkedIn page where we post pretty much weekly videos. We post weekly videos talking about Alteryx, Tableau, and other BI tools, for example. So introducing you to those specific aspects, as well as on the YouTube page, you should be able to find the webinars talking about, for example, Alteryx Designer, and introducing you to Alteryx Designer. So how it works and everything else, okay? So with this, let's dive deep into use cases, all right? And as I mentioned, please feel free to use the Q&A section that you have on your Zoom menu. I'm looking at it right now. So if anyone has any questions, just drop it in. And then if it is related to what I'm talking about at the moment, I'll answer the question. If not, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end to actually answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so let's then look at a more complex use case than what we had presented before, which was, for example, just in-time inventory, process automation, sales forecasting, and a lot more, right? Today, we're going to be talking about predictive modeling. However, the moment that we talk about predictive modeling, some of you be like, I don't know what to do. Like, what's that? Like, that's not my job. My job is not to do this. If you recall, I mentioned just a couple minutes ago that we have the ability of going beyond of what we think we can do with Alteryx. Alteryx, it is a user-friendly, code-free environment. So it does not require you to know any type of coding language, okay? So with this use case, what's the scenario? Maybe the business needs to generate more advanced insights for decision making. So the business is growing, right? And then maybe we're gonna have different asks from our director, our CEO, to be able to generate more insights, whether it's more advanced or different insights. Or maybe you are just operating regularly. However, now you need to analyze your current customer trends and to be able to forecast the future. So now we're actually talking about what? Planning, right? So we get the financial data that we have access to, and now we begin to plan for the future. How do we plan for the future? We need to be able to either know what's going to happen, but no one's a magician, or we have the ability of trying to predict what can happen in the future based on what? Historical data. So analyzing our trends that we had before, we're going to be able to predict what's going to happen in the future. Of course, now we can be talking about something that some of you may be a little bit confused, but now we can introduce why Alteryx can be a solution. But to introduce why Alteryx solution, we need to talk about the problem. What's the problem? You don't know Python, you don't know R, you don't know coding language, for example, or maybe you do. Alteryx can actually work both ways. As I mentioned, Alteryx is code-free and code-friendly. But let's go ahead and pretend that you only know Excel. How do you even begin how to do something? Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to outsource that. But how much does it cost? How much does it cost for me to learn something like Python? How much time would I actually take for me to develop something like this? And even if I get to the point of developing something, what do I know afterwards? Why Alteryx is a solution is because it is a code-free environment. You're going to have the ability of building those predictive models with literally drop-down options and select options. So there's no type of writing any type of code. Alteryx is going to give you everything easy. You're going to have the ability of testing it out. You have negatives, you have positives. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Alteryx, you don't really have any negatives because you're not really doing anything besides just testing it out. So as of this moment, you're going to have the ability of taking control of your analysis, right? You generate your own analysis. So with this, let's then actually jump into Alteryx and let me introduce you to what I'm talking about. Okay? So right now, you should be able to see Alteryx, right? So whenever we talk about Alteryx in general, we talked about a lot of different tools right here at the top. We introduced you to different workflows during your last session. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be diving deeper into more of the predictive side of things, just for this use case, okay? Afterwards, we're going to be talking about PDF manipulation, for example, bank statements, K1s, and invoices in general, right? So with this, we can then look at Alteryx. This right here is a pretty simple workflow. The last time that you saw a workflow, for example, the one that I showed you building out financial reporting with income statement, that was a lot bigger. This one's pretty straightforward and simple. Why? Alteryx makes everything simple, okay? So I have the ability of connecting to files or, of course, databases, as we talked about during our last session. If you have any questions regarding what we can connect to, when it comes to files, of course, it's pretty much everything that you can connect to. Your regular Excel files, CSV files, text files, and on, as well as, of course, connecting to databases over here, Oracle, SQL Server, Amazon, MySQL, Salesforce, Snowflake, on and on, right? Just all the different connections. So you pretty much cover when it comes to Alteryx in general, connecting to databases. Why am I saying this? Because, of course, most of the time, your data would not be stored in an XLSX file, right? It's not going to be stored on a CSV, on an Excel file. It's going to be stored at your database. So you have the ability of connecting to your database, extracting the live data, and putting it inside of Alteryx. But don't worry, you're not changing your data. You're not messing with the data if you test it out. Okay. So don't worry. Alteryx will manipulate everything in memory. So what it's going to do is it's going to create data in memory for you. So just a copy in memory of the data. So what we have here is I've inputted a data set. In this case, it is pulling from a specific file that contains 100,000 records. So this is a historical data set that I have. So what's this about? Right here, you can see some data on loan contracts. So you can see some personal information, some contract information, income information, some education level, credit score, and a column called overdue. So what it's saying is that these clients, based on my historical data, they at some point they became overdue on their payments or not. So what I'm trying to predict is whether this client will now, new clients will go overdue at some point. So you can think of, maybe this does not apply for my specific use case, but you can think of anything that you like to define whether in the future someone's going to be likely or not likely to do something. Or maybe you want to predict a number, right? So based on historical data, you may want to predict how much sales you're going to be generating with that one product, for example. Different ways of actually leveraging predictive modeling, you have a lot. When it comes to predictive modeling, you can see right here, all different options that Alteryx offers you. And as I mentioned, they're all code-free. So what I mean by this is, after preparing our data for the model, as you can see right here, we have our data prepared. What we're going to be doing is inputting into a model, in this case, a logistic regression model. You can see right here that on the left-hand side, now I'm clicked on a logistic regression model. You can see right here. So this tool I'm clicked on right here. What I have to do, literally select what I'm trying to predict. So in this case, I'm trying to predict the overdue column. And then I need to select which columns I can use to predict them. Okay, so it is super straightforward. You know that, right? You know your data. You have the ability of simply selecting what you're trying to predict and which columns can be used to predict something, right? So, for example, we're trying to predict whether someone is likely to go overdue or go default on their contract, right? So maybe the monthly payment can be a column that we use. Maybe the yearly income or the contract, or maybe their credit score, or maybe some kind of education level, right? So if they have a PhD or if they never got done with high school, for example, some kind of variable that you can use in your data to predict something. If you don't know how to do this, we're going to be talking about this a little bit. However, you can also do some data investigation using your tools. So you have a lot of options and everything is code-free. Everything looks like this. Alteryx is literally going to ask you what you want to do and give you all the options that you have. Just select them, and then you have the ability of creating a model. So now, what happened here? Of course, I have already ran the workflow. But now, if I click on any of the outputs, so I'm going to have three outputs. The O output, which now you can see this is actually this is the model. We just built this out. Okay. But if you want to see some information on the model, you can see right here. If you are familiar with everything, you can kind of understand what this is. But if you're not, for example, for a logistic regression model, probably one of the main things that you'd be wanting to look at is the R-square information. Okay, so using this specific model right here, we're able to get a 94% R-square for this. Okay, so this can be a little confusing, right? You don't really know exactly what this means. You can always use the little chart that you have, Alteryx gives you. You can see right here as it loads. That's going to be letting you know how everything is functioning. So you can see you have pretty good accuracy. Then you can see that it was able to predict almost 99% of what was positive with positive, and pretty much 98% of what was negative with negative. So you just have a lot of information to further analyze your data. And then what I can do is bring it in different data sets. I can test my model out. So what I'm doing is called deploying or scoring my model. And then using a brand new data set, as you can see right here. So this is my brand new data set, even though of course it looks similar. It's something brand new because it does not have the overdue column. I'm now scoring the model, and you can see right here. So the first customer is saying that he's probably less likely to go overdue. As you can see, it is 0.99 and pretty much 0% for true. But you can see the other ones right here. They're likely to go overdue at some point. Then, for example, if you want to apply some kind of logic of 80% confidence level, so you can see that on my data set, 5,000 customers, my model predicted that at some point they will go overdue. Okay, so you can see right here the score column that they were likely to go overdue at some point. Okay, as I scroll down, you can see all the options that I have for clients. So what can I do with this data? Get this data, analyze it, see if there are any actions that needed to be taken, and then of course, move along with what I need to do, which is generate insights. So in general, you can see how easy it is to operate predictive modeling using Alteryx. Literally about drop-down menus, and all of them, they will look a lot similar to what you can see right here on the left-hand side. Okay, but let's say that we're talking about the same scenario, but worse. I have no idea what I have to do. Literally no idea. I don't even know what predictive model is. I don't know what options I have, because if you recall, right here I have a lot of options, right? But what options should I use for my data? Alteryx can actually be a solution for this as well. There is something called machine learning, and Alteryx has that, which is part of the add-on, which is called Intelligence Suite. So with the machine learning as well as the text mining, they're going to be seeing this a little bit. Those are add-on to Alteryx. So not this, okay? This comes in with Alteryx Designer. Something that I'm going to be talking about in just a little bit is an add-on, okay? So let's go back to the use case. Why Alteryx solution? Because it has the step-by-step assisted modeling. You're going to input your data, and then Alteryx is going to do the rest. It's going to literally hold your hand and let you know which model to use to be able to use your data. Okay? So let's then actually jump into what I'm talking about. Machine learning. Okay? And for this, we can close it out, the other one that we had talked before. All right, so this is the same data that you saw before. But now we're going to go by the scenario that we have no idea what model to use. What we're going to do is using the system modeling under machine learning, which, as I mentioned, is an add-on. So machine learning right here and text mining, these are add-ons called the Intelligence Suite. We're going to have the system modeling right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select assisted. I'm going to start the system modeling. I'm going to walk you through exactly everything. In a high level, actually, we're going to be holding a new webinar talking about the Intelligence Suite with my colleague, Robert. He's going to be presenting Intelligence Suite as well and diving deeper into assisted modeling if you want to know more about it. So you can just watch this, understand how it's used, and then with Robert's webinar, you're going to have the ability of understanding everything that we are accomplishing over here. Okay, so right now I'm loading the system modeling menu, and you can see right here. What I'm going to do is start building it up. And everything is pretty straightforward. Also, it's going to ask me what I'm trying to predict. So as it's loading my data right here, I'm going to see all the options for what I'm trying to predict, which in this case will be the overdue column. Then you can see that I'm going to have either a classification or a regression model. So you see that now I'm trying to get answers, right? Now I understand that if I'm trying to predict overdue column, I'm talking about a classification model, okay? And I can see that Alteryx actually gives me some examples as well. For example, a credit risk. So I can click on next. Then it's going to ask me, do I do it step-by-step or automatic? So selecting this, Alteryx is going to build everything for you. So step-by-step. It's going to be asking me my data types. And you can see that Alteryx saying the city, birthday, first name, last name, street should not be used to be able to predict something. So with this, I can just remove them. And for this as well, I can, example, remove the ID field. Okay, I can click on next. So all those columns that you saw before being highlighted will now be removed. This is asking if my data set is clean. It analyzes my data set and I have no missing values. So I can click on next, and I'm pretty much almost done. My second to last step will be to select the features that I want to use to predict something. So you can see that it's saying that credit score is too highly associated with my target. Maybe that makes sense, maybe that does not. So it's up to you to decide. Should credit score be used to predict whether a customer or client will not pay his loan contract? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? So you can select this or not select this. For this example, let's not select this and see what happens. If, as I mentioned, we're running the same data set that we ran before. And now, based on my choices, also it's going to give me 4 models to run. So decision tree, a regression, random forest, and XGBoost. So I can run those 4 models. You can see that it gives me some pros and cons as well for each one of them. I can run all of them. And now Alteryx is running all those models, and then actually it's going to let me know which model behaves the best with my data set. So I could then actually use them and compare them. So now you can see the regression model and decision tree they ran. I can see some accuracy score, some log loss, AUC, and more information right here. So it is running the XGBoost and the random forest. Now you can see the random forest is being chosen as the top one. Let's see XGBoost. So Alteryx literally gives me the answer, right? So what model do I need to run? So we can just wait for XGBoost, then there you go. You can see that it said that the random forest is the best model. As you can see, is the first one. But if you want to select a different one, go ahead and select a different one, up to you. You decide everything, but Alteryx is going to give you everything that you need to know. Okay? If you want to see additional information, you can see the little overview, some interpretation of which columns should be used or not, and on, right? So for this, we can see that our last workflow, we use a regression model, but now Alteryx is saying that maybe we should use a random forest. So I can add the model to the canvas. In this case, we have a little error. We can always go back right here and then load everything again if we have some time. You can just give it a second. But as I mentioned, that was a way that we can just load everything into Alteryx. Let's go back right here and select the random forest again and add the model to the workflow. In this case, it's probably because I have some other stuff open right here. It's not really opening. Errors do happen live, as you can see. Let's try again with a different model just to see if that happens. But it's definitely because I have a lot of stuff open right here that is pulling a lot of memory on my computer. So let's just try a different model and see if that works for us. Just loading system modeling again. So there's also a different way that you can see that you can always go back and change everything. So for example, let's try adding a decision tree right here. And add models and see if, yeah, so errors do happen live. You can maybe just see, as I mentioned during our next webinar, that we can load the system modeling and we can move along with it and load this into Alteryx. But probably if I go all the way back to what I had before in this workflow, because I deleted this, I can kind of show you how it was before. But as I mentioned, errors do happen live, so it is prone to have issues sometimes. So we can just see if we can go back and bring everything over. If not, we can always, of course, just move along. And as I mentioned, we're going to be having a webinar or intelligence suite where we're going to have the ability of dive deeper into the assisted modeling right here as well. So let's see if going back, we're going to be able to load everything. Yeah, so let's just abort this, for example, because it's going to take a long time to go back to everything how it was before. So yeah, apologize for this, but what will happen right here is that would then actually load a workflow showing the whole machine learning environment. Yeah, in this case, it's not saved right here, but what will happen if I have some time at the end, I'm going to try to pull up the original workflow, and then I'll show you exactly how everything here will be populated with the new modeling options. So yeah, just going back to the workflow, you can see that what will happen will be this right here. The new information will be loaded. So I will not do this automatically. Alteryx would just generate the whole workflow for me. So this would happen if we did not receive that one error, which is due to memory on my computer right now. Other things that you need to know as well is that besides these tools right here, besides the tools that you can see at the top right here for system modeling, the newest version of Alteryx, so the version that came out this year, Alteryx has quarterly sessions. So with the newest version, you're going to have more tools, right? So you're going to have the build features, the feature types, also ML and data health. So you can see that Alteryx is always giving you more to work with. So when it comes to machine learning, you're going to have the ability of developing even more. Okay? So let's then jump into a different use case, which would be the PDF parsing, which is something probably you guys really want to know about. So what's the scenario? Maybe we're going to be receiving a lot of PDF files from clients, or maybe we just have a lot of internal documents that are generated in a PDF format, or maybe just we have a lot of third-party providers that will be sending data in a PDF format. So what's the problem? I mean, PDFs are really easy to understand, right? They're pretty graphical and easy to understand, but they can be really annoying to be manipulated. What I mean by this is you cannot really just sometimes copy and paste stuff from PDF. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But you're going to have to go and drag, select everything, and then copy and paste into, for example, an Excel file if you want to manipulate that, right? So what happens is that they're really difficult to use softwares to automate any type of process. However, why Alteryx can be a solution? We're going to have something called the Intelligence Suite, which is an add-on to Alteryx Designer, as I mentioned, that uses something called OCR. Okay, so using OCR, that means that we're going to have the ability of reading PDF files using OCR, which is just pretty much using the geolocation of data inside of the files, like the X or Y coordinates, and extracting data. Then with Alteryx Nature, we have the ability of automating the process. Then with this, we can just use a single PDF as a template and manipulate as many PDFs as we need. So like 1, 2, 5, 10, 1,000 PDFs, as many as you need. It's going to make a lot more sense whenever we dive deeper into what we have here. So let's talk about PDF manipulation. If I were to load just a PDF, right? So for example, I have a PDF right here, which is a K1 file, right? If I wanted to just simply load this file into Alteryx, I could use the setup that you can see right here, and then I have the ability of loading the file as a column, okay? So if I were to open right here, you can kind of see the data right here at the bottom. Okay, so I have this way of loading data, but it's not really clean and easy to manipulate, right? But that's not what we can do. This is a step, but then we have a different step to actually enhance this transformation. So let me show you. If we were to load just the whole thing, we can. However, manipulating K1s, you don't have to load everything. What you have to do is load a specific part of the file, for example. Okay, so what I'm saying is that what I did, I've loaded whatever PDFs were in this folder right here on my computer, and then using something called an image template, I can load a single PDF, and using this PDF as an example, what I can do is highlight exactly what I want Alteryx to extract, and then actually extract that, okay? So what I'm saying is that Alteryx is going to be using OCR. So for example, if I want to extract the beginning date, I can literally highlight this, and I can call this date. So if I were to run the workflow, Alteryx using OCR would read this and then transform this into data. Okay, so like data that you can see at the bottom right here. The same thing I can do for ending, for example. but on and on. Like I can highlight exactly what I want. So Alteryx is going to read everything. When I mean everything, it's going to say, it's going to read the one, it's going to read the ordinary business income loss right here, right? So you're going to have the ability of actually loading everything. However, Pedro, do I need to do this over and over and over again? No. So for example, we know the K1s, they usually follow the same structure when it comes, of course, the same page, right? So in this case, we have a 2019, was the one that I found online. So that's why I use this one. If I were to run, for example, hundreds of K1s, how can I do this? Instead of selecting everything for all of them, I'm going to be selecting a template, which is this, and highlighting everything that I want, and then this is going to be applied for every single thing that I have. Okay. However, I don't need to do this over and over again every time that I open the workflow. What I can do is highlight everything once, and I can save this. So for example, I can clean everything up right here. I can import an annotation. So I'm going to import a K1 file that we loaded. So this JSON file right here, which you can export. So you create everything, then you click on export, and then you can just save the JSON file, and you can import the same JSON file right here. So now you can see that everything is highlighted in red. So I'm extracting all of this. Okay, so the dates, all the values right here, and all the different things, right? So then, of course, you can take a look at it. This is the original file that I was talking about. Okay. Of course, we also have a different K1 right here that we have some information, just to show you that we can manipulate more than one K1. Okay. So we have loaded our template, and as I mentioned, you just have to do it once forever. So next time they need to run this, you can use the same template or whatever. You can literally just use once. You don't have to do over and over again. Okay. So I have it right, of course, to run the workflow. So what happens is that, let me show you by clicking right here, is that Alteryx will read everything. So you see how you read ordinary business income 1, then for the 1, 2, 3. If you recall right here, I put ordinary income 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on, right? So this is the original file. Then as you click right here, you can see the dates, you can see everything else, right? So you can see how Alteryx can just manipulate everything and be able to extract that specific part of the file. Okay, so as I move along the workflow, just doing some manipulation of my data, cleaning everything up, what I can do is actually have everything in a format that I can manipulate my data. So you're gonna be asking me, maybe I can do this once and then I don't have to. So like, if we were to do just once, like you have a process that you have to manipulate PDF file just at least once. Yeah, maybe go ahead and do it manually. But the moment that you have more than one instance of doing this, Alteryx is a solution because you automate the process, right? And as I mentioned, you can input as many files as you want. It can be a million files, doesn't matter. It's just gonna be running until that's done. But it doesn't matter. You can run as many as you want, and it's not gonna crash. Okay. So as I move along the workflow, what happens is that I'm manipulating everything, assign the correct names, and right there at the end, what I have is everything formatted correctly. So I have my partnership name, address showing up right here, all my values, as you can see right here. If you want to take a look at it and compare, you can see right here that ordinary income 1, rental in state 2. I just put 1, 2, 3 because it's easier to follow along. You can see that I actually duplicated right here 10, just to see that we're not really going in order. We're just literally automating and extracting the raw data out of the PDF file. Okay. When it comes to PDF files, of course, we're going to have something called an image PDF and something called a text PDF. So OCR can be used for both, but Alteryx actually gives you a different way of manipulating PDFs besides OCR as well. Okay. So we're going to be diving into that right now. But as I mentioned, manipulating files like PDF can be easily accomplished with Alteryx using OCR, as you can see right here. And of course, if your goal is to output this to an Excel file, for example, you can always just load the Excel file. And I can show you right here real quick as the Excel loads. Give me 1 second. So you can see that I've loaded all the information for the K1s right here. Then talking about the second K1. Second K1 is a smaller K1. If I were to open right here, you see that we have less information. This should show you that even though we don't have everything still, you can still extract all the information. Okay? So let's go ahead and close this out. And of course, if you do have any questions regarding what we talk about modeling, machine learning, now talking about K1s, please feel free to reach out via email or my LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to jump into your call and talk about what Alteryx can do when it comes to these specific use cases. Okay? So now you've seen how manipulating PDF with K1s can be accomplished. Manipulating data like K1s can be accomplished, right? Using Alteryx OCR. However, there is also something else that you can do. Okay, let me go ahead and close this out, and let's jump into our last use case. Okay, which would be comparing what Alteryx can do with the add-on called Intelligence Suite and what Alteryx already has by default using Designer. Okay, so what we have now is an example of manipulation of bank statements. So I have this little bank statement right here, as you can see. Maybe I'm trying to extract all the information, maybe just some of it. For example, if I were trying to extract just account summary, I can. If I was trying to extract this information right at the top, I could. Or maybe just the transaction details as well. We have a lot of options to go with. You can do everything or just some of it, as I mentioned before, right? So with this, I mentioned to you, you're gonna have two ways of doing this. One of them we kind of already talked about, which is using Alteryx OCR to create a template, and then you can load as many files as you want. So this example right here, we're just highlighting what we're trying to extract, which would be the date, the details, and the balance, right? Then as I click right here, you can see we're able to extract the date, even though it was in different lines, details, as well as balance, okay? As I click on different tools, you can see the data set being manipulated. Okay, so this at the top is using, as I mentioned, Alteryx Intelligence Suite OCR, right? So as I click on everything, you can see the data set changing, and we are manipulating our data to actually clean everything up and put in a format that makes sense. Then this should be it at the end right here. Literally getting the same information that we had before, but putting in a table format. So now it's not anymore in an Excel file. Sorry, it's not anymore in a PDF file. It's in a table format that can be outputted to an Excel file, for example. So if I were to open this, you can see that I've now automated my process to look at bank statements from the one provider, use the one layout, and extract all the information from me. So I have my ending balance, my deposits, and my withdrawals that, of course, can be calculated using the end balance, as we did, all the information right here. So if we're talking about, for example, auditing, that's super important. If we're just talking about the regular controller job of making sure that all the bank statements, all the bank reconciliations, they are being performed correctly, you can, different ways they can actually control and manipulate this, Alteryx will accommodate. Okay, so you can see how using OCR, we went ahead and highlighted what we needed right here at the beginning. We then put everything in a format, which was a text format right here, just regular data. And then we cleanse it up to show this as an Excel file at the end, right? So something else similar to what we talked about before. However, this is not the only way that you can manipulate data, okay? Especially, of course, PDF data. As I mentioned, you have the Intelligence Suite right here at the top. So the IF, I like to call it, okay? However, you also have the regular Designer version, which is using something called a PDF input, which can be right here in and out. This was downloaded directly from the Alteryx gallery, which is free, okay? Difference between them. One is using OCR to extract the data that you highlight. So you really have to highlight something, right? So you highlight something, then whatever you highlighted is being extracted. And the other one it's getting the text file that it is being written in the background of the PDF file, and then loading the actual text file. So if I open up right here the bank statement, you can see that what I have here is the same thing that I have here. However, instead of selecting a specific part, I'm loading the whole file up, as you can see, right? So literally everything. This way, we can do something a lot similar to what we did with Alteryx OCR, Intelligence Suite OCR. However, it's a different way. As I click on the different tools, moving along the workflow, you can see that we're now beginning to cleanse our data up and be able to actually extract what we're looking for. So the end result is going to be the same. It's just a different way of getting to the same end result. So you can see that now I'm clicked on the second to last tool. And you can see as I click on the two above and the below using Alteryx OCR or text ability. So at the top, we have, as I mentioned before, OCR. And at the bottom, we have text. Okay. So you can see that nothing's changing, right? They're literally the same thing. However, they all begin in different ways. So we have the ability of getting the same end result, whether you prefer to use Intelligence Suite OCR, or whether you prefer to simply go ahead and use Alteryx PDF to text conversion options. Okay, so you can see right here that I have two different tabs, one being a text and the other one being OCR. And then they're literally the same thing. Okay, so in general, Alteryx will give the ability of manipulating PDF files as you wish. Okay, so going back to what we had right here, our presentation, we're close to wrapping everything up. And like this is pretty much it, what we had to present to you. All we have to do is just present to you a different way that you can manipulate different type of data. So whether maybe being creating modeling, maybe that being creating some type of manipulation using machine learning, or maybe manipulating PDF files. Okay, I actually loaded a different example right here just to quickly show you what the machine learning would look like. So this is a different example of what we can do. I can run this on the background as I talk about just wrapping up everything else. But yeah, in general, this is what I had to present to you guys. When it comes to FP&A, there is a lot of manipulation of data that happens, especially when we're talking about repetitive tasks. In the first session that we talked about, we manipulated regular data, regular process that we have. And then in this session, we talked about more advanced use cases. Okay, so just try to quickly show you, because we had a one error happening. I can click on the assist modeling right here. And then this, of course, is already built. So Alteryx actually built, as I mentioned, everything that's happening right here. Then as we load this, we're going to be able to see the same window that you saw before. The difference that this case, we already ran the workflow, then it already loaded all the data that we had right here in the background. Okay, so you can see right here the same window that you had before. So we can just give it a second to load everything, and you can see the same window. And all we did was just click on the option and add the model to the workflow. And then with that, we just create everything that you saw in the background. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, just to wrap it up everything again, this was it. We presented process automation in the first section, represented beginning forecasting, represented data reporting with financial statement reporting as a PDF or as a text file or as a regular Excel file, for example. Today's session, we talked about machine learning, predictive modeling, as well as PDF manipulation. Okay, so this was it. I want to see if you guys have any questions, and of course, please use the chat if you have any questions. I see Daniel. If the PDF has handwritten inside, how well can Alteryx recognize and parse the data? So Daniel, this is when what I was talking about, different types of PDFs, right? We have the text PDF and an image PDF. Using OCR, of course, OCR is not perfect. Like, no OCR right now is perfect, but it is real close of getting everything perfect. It is more about the resolution of the PDF that you have. So are we talking about something that's really blurry and kind of hard to read, or something that it is just something scanned but pretty clean to read, right? If we're talking about something that's blurry, we're gonna have issues. But like any other software, or maybe just like you looking at, you may have issues, right? However, if you're talking about something that's really clean, using Alteryx OCR, it should be really easy to extract the data live and clean from the PDF. That makes sense, Daniel? As I mentioned, if you do have any questions, you like to do a demo or anything like that, please feel free to reach out data meeting. You can find me on my, of course, data meeting email, on my LinkedIn page right here, Pedro DR Faria, and then we can actually have a conversation more about your use cases or more about Alteryx in general. So Sam asked, what if the data from the PDF isn't in a consistent format? So Sam, it kind of goes back to what I just mentioned, right? If the data is in a good format, we can highlight that specific region where the data can be found and get that information, right? However, that's when sometimes using the text option of simply just reading the text file they have, the PDF was actually built in the background, and then parsing the information out. There's something called regular expression regex that can be really used for that. So you're gonna have both options. So Simon, just to kind of answer your question, you shouldn't have a problem if it's not really in a consistent format. However, you need to find a way of making that consistent. What I mean by this is maybe you don't, it's not specifically on like at the top of the page, maybe it's at the bottom of the page, and then the other one's gonna be at the top, and on and on. So if you're looking at that specific bottom of the page to extract maybe a different PDF, is not gonna do that. But maybe if you look overall on the whole page, you know that the data is gonna be showing up at some point over there. So you can just, for example, highlight the whole page. Then using Alteryx data cleansing options, you have the ability of transform the data and extracting only what you're looking for using dynamic options. So it is possible. You just have to create further development with this. Yeah, so that's pretty much how you can accomplish that if it's not in a consistent format. Either making consistent by looking like in a bigger picture, or using the text options. So the second option that I showed you before, because that gives you a more dynamic way, because as you saw, we're just loading everything and then extracting what we're looking for based on dynamic logic. Okay, so if there are no other questions, as I mentioned, feel free to reach out on my LinkedIn, on my email. This is my community handle on Alteryx Designer, actually community, Alteryx community, Alteryx community itself. So feel free to reach out, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube. You're gonna be seeing this being posted. We're gonna be seeing a lot of different content being posted there as well. So yeah, that was it I had to present to you guys. I do appreciate your time today. Thank you everyone for being here. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out at any point.
If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to know when future videos are posted. Thank you for watching.